Hi, book club members. I'm Jen.
And I'm Carrie.
And this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crack. This is episode number 84, and our book is Outgunned by Denny Flowers, which tells the story of ace pilot Lucille Van Shard as she repels an orc invasion on the planet Bacchus, known for its wine.
Ha ha
You didn't see that coming, did you?
ha.
We posted several questions on our website, WH40kbookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our discussions via Twitter, YouTube, our site, or Encrypted Vox channel. Spoiler warning. If you haven't yet read this book, go and check it out, and then come back to this episode as we're going to be talking about it from start to finish in great detail. With that, let's dive in. Did you like this book?
I did. I had fun.
It was okay. I wasn't a super fan of it. I didn't hate it. We've definitely read books that I liked a lot less. It was just okay though. I liked parts of it.
I thought the telling from the point of view of the propagandist was very interesting. But I think why I liked it was like, okay, so I never going to get these questions, but I didn't really like any of the characters in the book. And I don't think I liked Pliant. He was it.
Pliant was great.
But I don't think we were supposed to, because I really think this is the reason why I chose it to be from this story of a propagandist, because in many, many ways, this is like taking the veil off of the propaganda. It's like, the truth behind all the propaganda. So, and it's one thing to kind of see it in, Wraithbone Phoenix, where it's kind of comical in a way that, they're talking, oh, like there's nothing to see here. It's all fine. And if someone says they did see something, then you need to call this person on them,
Exactly.
So that's kind of funny, but this is like from like point of view of like, no, we are actually seeing like how they come up with this. We want to get some great shots so we can, try to, help with recruitment, that we are so amazing at everything that we do and everything is just fine. So I kind of like that, because in many ways when we see stuff from the Astra Militarum, yes, we see snippets of that, of, some of these truths, but there's always some redeeming character, some redeeming thing going on, and this didn't have anything of that, which I thought was just kind of brilliant. It's just like, no, this is just the bare truth and it sucks.
Interesting way of looking at it. And actually does raise it a little bit in my esteem when you word it that way. There were a couple things here going on that I really liked, in terms of like which parts stood out to me. I liked that despite him kind of thumbing his nose at his own industry with the propagandists, he himself is a product of it. And we got to see that a couple of times, right? Like with the orcs, where Pliant is like, oh, a lot of them get pretty big like that. And he's like, no, because that's not what he's seen in his propaganda picks, right? And the whole idea of maybe there being some intelligence there.
Oh yeah, like how much he was just so shocked about that one pretending to be dead. He was like, yes, that's not right. Like, they can't do stuff like this. And of course, I'm snickering, especially after reading, Catachan Devil. I mean,
yes,
we've seen orcs be sneaky.
Propatactics.
That's right. Propatactics. Tactics. Like, you got to really
very, very emphasis on that K sound.
Yes. It's not. That's why they do it with a K, not a C. That's.
Well, and that's one of the things I really liked. My favorite scene in the book is actually when Pliant, so after Simlex is having his Howard Hughes moment, right? Of, I can't capture the speed of the planes.
Oh my God, he was such a crybaby.
Oh my God. We'll get into that later. But like after he's having this like Howard Hughes breakdown about not being able to capture the speed of the planes, and Pliant comes to him with a solution, I did like how his first response is, did a tech priest sign off on this? Well, no. So it's like, I need a solution, and they present him a solution, but again, because he is a product of the Warhammer 40k, the Imperial propaganda, right? Ooh, this is tech heresy. Like, what you have done is tech heresy.
Right. But you also
had a problem, and they solved it.
But you see that a lot, like even with his interactions with the Governor Dolos. He acts like he's so disgusted by everything, but then at the same time, like he exhibits the exact same attitude with stuff. It's like so hypocritical, and I think that's one reason why I like this book so much, is that everyone is a hypocrite. There's like again, no redeeming qualities. We're all hypocrites. There's no heroes here, which isn't that kind of like one of the big things we always talk about with the Imperium? Like what was that meme? Like one of our friends like brought up as like,
Oh, with the Black Panther thing,
yeah.
where well, who's the good guys? We don't do that here.
Well, no. It had like a multiple choice, like
Oh my
who's the
God, yes, I
hero?
had put that in there.
Yeah. That was you. Okay, I thought it was Ross or
And
Jimmy. But
the
yeah,
answer is obviously the orcs are the hero of the 40k universe
because
because
they're
they're the
living their
only
best
ones
life.
living their best life. They're the only ones having fun. Which, again, it's very funny to read books just from the imperial perspective because we have seen so many books now showing that orc perspective that like some of these scenes, like basically whenever they were in the Grey Storm, hysterical from the orcs perspective,
Oh
right? Because
yeah,
like when they talk about it raining bullets, this makes so much orcish
it
sense, right?
does.
But then it's coming from the imperials, so they're just like, what is going on? I'm like, oh, this is terrifying. This is absolutely terrifying, but if we had a chapter from the orcs' perspective, it would be hilarious. Propa tactics.
Oh my god, I actually kind of wanted some of this to be from the orcs' perspective, just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, what's so funny is that they and both of the main characters in this, and even the governor, like they protest like what they have to do, and at the same time, they spout it just the same. It's
Mm-hmm.
hysterical. Like, gosh, in the end, when they're both turning everything against one another, when like he's even talking about like if she could even fly what what one of their planes. She's like, well, I really don't know. He's like, oh, are you trying to say that a human isn't as smart as an orc because that's heresy? She's like, oh, okay, I see how this is going. And then she'd flip it back on him with something else. It's when you have all these rules, like you just everything gets backed up against you, right? So
Very much so. And there's so much stuff. So I thought it was absolutely hysterical when the servo skull was translating what the
oh
orc
god,
was saying.
yeah,
And it was basically speaking in Elcor, where it was like, query, statement. Um, Super fun, right? And it was really fun too because you could imagine what they were saying. But I did like how they're both kind of like, there's something really weird about this. Like we're essentially communicating with an orc. And I like when she tells him, she's like, cut the feed. And he's like, I'm not actually controlling this.
right,
Like, again, they're so entrenched within their world, which is awesome, that there's all these little things that we, again, player knowledge, not character knowledge, that it makes it kind of fun, but also a little frustrating, but in a good
right,
way.
right.
Does that even make sense? I don't know if that even makes sense. Makes sense in my head. Um, a lot of the stuff with the orcs, I'm with you though. I think I would have liked to have seen maybe a chapter or two from the orcs, especially because that green storm was like super cool.
Well, like I think it'd be cool if he wrote like a short story from
That would
this,
be awesome.
based on the orcs' point of view, especially when if the Eldari like decide to come back, like that'd be kind of funny too.
Oh my god. We'll talk more about the Eldari later. That's actually one of my big complaints with the book. But let's talk about Lucille von Schard, hero. What did you think of her as a character? Did you like her? Was she a good subject for heroism in the 40k universe?
She was a bitch. I mean, and before I get like any like I don't know like misogynist hate, if she were a guy, I'd be like, he was a dick, and just honestly, while on the one hand, like I was liking her in the beginning, like with her little pilot banter between her and Pliant, like it was kind of funny. It's kind of stuff that you would expect, but then when you see like just how arrogant and entitled she is, just in like because she knows she's the best. Well, just because you know you're the best doesn't mean that you have to be an ass about it.
Right.
There's like some of the problems that we even have with some of our favorite athletes. They're so good. Well, they're not. You don't like them as much when they know how good they are and they're jerks about it. It's exact. Yes, she has this great skill, but she's not a team player at all.
No. No. And I'm going to try to resist going on a feminist rant because this is not just a Denny Flowers issue. This is a larger pop cultural issue right now. I could name several characters off the top of my head. Galadriel from the new Rings of Power, or whatever it's called, the new Loader, not really Loader, story on Amazon. General Hodo from the Hodo, yeah, purple hair lady from the second new Star Wars movie. I could list several other examples of this where people don't know how to write strong female characters. They give the traits that we would call
every woman
juvenile,
in Robert Jordan book. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. They give these traits that are juvenile, and if it was a man, we would call them chauvinistic and poor leadership and arrogance. Like, again, as you said, like, these are traits that if this was a male character, we would hate them. See Gradiolus on the opposite side of her.
Yes, hated him too.
I'm honestly not sure if we were supposed to like Venchard or not.
I don't think we were.
I don't think we were. The thing I don't like when people present these, what we would call toxic masculinity or toxically masculine traits, but we're supposed to find them charming because the character has a vagina. The scene I really rankled. I was with you. I liked the scene with her and Pliant, but then when you see her in that next scene where she tosses the wine bottle and she's like, "Oh no!" It was so juvenile. Like, are you 14? That was the part where that was my first thing where I was like, am I supposed to like this character? I don't think so.
No,
I really don't think we were supposed to like her. I think you're right. The more that I think about what you said,
she was a spoiled brat.
Very much so.
And so was Gradiolus, or Gradiolus. I'm going to say Gradiolus. So he was a spoiled brat too.
Oh, very much so. And I don't know if there's like a meta commentary there about.
And so is
Air Force.
Simlex, in many ways, spoiled brat. I mean, he would throw his little fit when he couldn't get his way. Oh, I can't. It doesn't follow my skulls can't follow the planes. You left my skull behind. And she's like, oh, I'm at that point. I was kind of with her being an ass. She's like, oh, I'm sorry that we left your precious toy behind while my people were getting killed.
Right.
She was right, 100% right at that point. Talking about how he doesn't have time to work. He's constantly being asked to do these, social things when he needs to work. He was being a brat. And no, I didn't like the governor either, but she kind of had a point at the same time. Like, you're a guest in my home and I ask you to do something. Is it really going to hurt you to come by and just hang out for a little bit?
Right. And it's not like she's like the CEO of a company or even the mayor of your city. Like, she's the planetary governor. For Lucille, though, all I could think about was one of my favorite quotes from a comedian named Jimmy Dore, where he says, "Your pain is ordinary." So, like, because they really didn't do anything with this, but he kept hinting at the fact that her family it's a family,
right?
And it is manufactured, right? They basically spell it out for you, like in the third chapter when he's looking at her child and stuff. But where she's sitting there talking with him, and it's supposed to be a moment of vulnerability for her, where she's like, "Yeah, we're the perfect family, almost like a manufactured family, you might say. Do you think you're alone in that?" And like later on, when she's just like, "I don't do anything I want because I was programmed to be this way." Yes, Pumpkin. Welcome to 40K. I'm sorry you weren't born in 2022. Like,
right.
That was a hard thing where I'm like, your pain is ordinary by 40K standards. Like, it almost took me out of the book that she would even think to complain about that, because that would be so like the Scala Progenium. That's just as they do.
Well, like, or you think about any of the Catachan. This is where they grew up.
Right.
Do they get a choice? No. Really?
No.
They really don't. But you also went to a Scala.
Yeah.
Your life, I mean, I'm so sorry you didn't have a choice in what you did. But so you decided to rebel and fail your stuff for, I don't know, reasons or whatever, just to, I don't know, just to rebel and be the outcast for whatever reason. But lots of other people would have loved to have been in that position, to be forced to be in a Scala. So I used to really love the show Gilmore Girls. And there was this one scene, it was in one of the later seasons, but it's when Rory is getting in a fight with her rich, pampered boyfriend at Yale, where she's like, you have all this money and all these opportunities, and you're just wasting him. And he's like, all I see is that I'm being shoved down one opportunity and I have no choice in any other manner. And she's like, do you know how many people would love to be thrown down that one opportunity? And that kind of thing just always kind of stuck with me, because man, we're all just going to complain, right? You're never going to be happy with what you have. You're always going to want something else, whether it's you're really poor and you wish you could be forced down into a Scala, or if you're this rich kid in a Scala who just was like, oh my God, I just want to have a choice. Well, life is what you make it, and you can sit there and bemoan that you don't have a choice, or you can suck it up and be the best damn thing that you are at your thing. And the thing is, and she is, but then her attitude sucks, so it just takes away from all of that. And she probably didn't care, and that's fine, but that's just such a waste.
Oh, totally agreed. But I think the thing that I would counter to her argument would be, who has a choice in the 40K universe? If you're going to be a law-abiding citizen, who has the choice? Do you think the people who are scribes chose that lifestyle? I mean, how many books have we read where there's some person doing menial labor, like they're working in a manufactorum, they're working as a scribe, they're working within the administratum. They didn't choose that life. That was just how they got pushed into it. Like,
oh my
there's
God,
not
can
a
you
lot
imagine
of
being in the
choice.
administratum, where you're basically in this room with like just a candle, and so you're constantly kind of stooping over at this desk, just going through these letters that are coming in, like yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, when she sees the tarot that falls down, and
Which
then
book was that? Was that the Dawn of Fire book?
It was, yes,
Okay.
but I can't remember if it was I think that was the first one.
Okay.
And it was the most soul-crushing description. Like, the only people who really get a choice, and even then it's not a lot of illusion of choice, are like the sub-hive dwellers. So like Baggett and Claude, for instance. But they're wanted fugitives. They chose their life, and that's how they're living. Like, I mean, when she's sitting there, she's just like, well, I don't get to do what I wanted to do. I didn't have a choice.
Well, what do you want to do?
Like, those are your options, is to do what you did. And again, like, I'm not saying that her life is easy. You're a fighter pilot in the Aeronautica Imperialis. It's not an easy life, and the life expectancy is pretty low. But you are an officer. You are afforded certain luxuries, like your alcoholism, which apparently is supposed to be an endearing and cute trait. Like, that was my only thing that I was like, how does she even know to pine for that? Like, are you surrounded by people who are like, oh yes, my parents are farmers, but I chose this life?
Yeah, because even think about the Volpone. They're super wealthy and they don't have a choice either.
No, you're either at home ruling the planet, or you're out fighting the worst the galaxy has to offer. And even they have kind of a cushy job, right? In terms of being an Astra Militarum. I don't want to swap places with them. Let me make that very clear. But that was when she was complaining, and she's just like, oh, my manufactured backstory. I was like, your pain is ordinary within your universe. That was, and I know that I'm just sounding like really super negative about her. I think I'm still torn on whether or not we were supposed to like her character.
I don't think so. If we were, then he did a really bad job. I think everything else was so well done that I have a hard time believing that we're supposed to like any of it. In a way, it kind of a lot like Spear of the Emperor. Like, I have a feeling that in that book we weren't supposed to like most of the characters either, to be totally honest.
Right.
And, something that we even explored, that it was just like, man, who's worse? The Adeptus Astartes, the Imperium, but the Inquisition, or chaos. And it's like, you have to weigh things, right? And it comes out that the Imperium is just slightly better. If you have to
Right.
you have to pick and choose, well, okay.
Order versus chaos.
Right. Well, I mean, it's like, either, but one thing is certain, though. Even if you don't believe that if you die, you're going to go to the Emperor's side, one thing is certain, and that is that if you die in chaos, your afterlife sucks. That is guaranteed. So I guess I'd rather take my chances with the unknown than sucks.
Right. For sure. No,
right.
I can't even argue with that.
And so so I really don't think we were supposed to like him really, because the only character
right.
I think he made like affable at all was Pliant.
And Pliant was delightful, but they also kind of implied that Pliant maybe wasn't the brightest bulb in the box. Like,
well, I can't really tell, to be totally honest, because he did actually, save Simlex's life flying in. I honestly think that Shard was just an ass. She was mean about everybody, except for Prosperous. Like he was the only, and even then, she just didn't say anything bad about him. That was it.
True. And it does remind me of that phrase, never meet your heroes, right?
Mm.
Like, she's this hero of the Imperium, but the truth is that she's just a arrogant braggart who's a terrible leader and is not a very good person. She's just very good at killing the enemies of the Imperium, which, let's be real, in the 40k universe, that's kind of the best personality trait you can have, and everything else just kind of comes secondary.
Right. Well, right. And on the other token, like looking at Great Gladiolus, is that no, he's not as talented as she is, but he gets his role. Like,
right.
Really, for the Pict, he is the person because he wants to. He wants to be that grand hero. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the skills to do it, but he is perfect to be part of propaganda, down to
very much
waxing his mustache.
And he knows that he's not a particularly likable guy, and he didn't care.
No,
he does not care. Again, his skill speaks for itself in his mind.
Right. Well, and he does make a point that he's like, at least I'm not drunk on the job. Well, you do got that going for you, but if we're going to set the bar, if that's where we're going to set the bar, well, okay, that's setting it pretty darn low. But
for sure.
Yeah, it's just such interesting parallels, I think, across many of the characters.
I would agree. What did you think of Kyle Simlex? Was he a good protagonist? Did you like him? Was he?
No, I didn't like him. He was a spoiled brat, and he was such a hypocrite the whole time. He's just like, I understand the truth, and I'm going to come here and I'm actually going to show the truth. Well, what'd you think that was going to get you? And then he acts all surprised, like at the end. Okay, well, that was what you set out to do, was to show the truth. Of course, nobody was going to like it, Dingleberry. No. I mean, the Imperium doesn't want the truth. I even wrote down one of his quotes about the truth. I remember. Oh yeah, let's see. Yeah, this whole thing about what the truth is. Well, the truth is what the Imperium says is the truth.
Exactly. And I was with you at the end there, where I was like, when he was just like, well, they didn't like my story. They basically Alan Smithied him. And he gets this piece out, and then he's downgraded to being a scribe. And part of me was like, you cut off your nose to spite your face. Like, now you're a scribe. Like, at least there was some benefits that came with rank, right? It seemed, I was with you in that, but it was also some of his hypocrisy was, again, because he was a product of that. Like, I'm going to show the truth. Oh, okay, well, the truth is that the orcs actually are demonstrating some tactics. No, that's heresy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Literally, this is really the perfect example of you can't handle the truth, if there ever was one.
Pretty much. Very much that scene. Because, I guess I was a little confused about that, and I was with you that he was a little petulant with his servo skulls, and I understand that I liked the commentary that was kind of the meta commentary of like these people, they don't know. Like, well, you left my servo skull. We also left actual human beings to
Yeah.
die.
When he started talking about it, he was like,
Right?
that was the skull of Mizar. And she was like, what? Really? I don't care. Who's that? You know?
Exactly.
Like, that's kind of funny.
Well, it is, and there is a lot of that. All I could think about was like the Blood Angels or some of the other chapters we've seen where they like these relics, or like there's some jokes with Gulliman, right? With when he's being presented with his relics, and he's like, oh my, like there's this great tendency to preserve and elevate, and I even liked like when he was talking about, I think it was Mizar, but it might have been the other one of the other ones where they were like, well, what happened to him? Well, unfortunately got a little close to investigating a thing of heretics. Anyways, like there's
Yeah.
some implications there that this is the skull you guys decided to preserve. I always love the servo skulls, especially because I feel like more and more authors are playing with the idea of them having personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Kikazar in particular, I felt like whenever it would like back away from people and stuff. I like that concept.
I kind
But
of
yeah,
like
I did notice.
that Kikazar went and hid with Pliant.
I thought that was great. Kikazar in general was my favorite of the skulls. Um, but there is this kind of hypocrisy of like, well, this relic is more important than any of these people's lives. But I'm here to show what a valiant effort these people are making and honor these people.
Like, I'm
Are
here.
you?
Yeah, I'm here to make this wonderful pick that this planetary governor, who's not even here, he's like, in the sector, but he's not here, that he wants, so you guys need to make him happy. Oh, sure. Yeah, we'll get right on that while we're all dying in the swamp.
Kind of found that whole dynamic a little odd too. That Dolos was so preoccupied with Sandwich. Um, I mean, I guess I get it, right? Like, obviously, like the president of the United States is very concerned about not offending the prime minister or something like that, right? Because there's, inner diplomacy. Um, but the fact that she was so obsessed with it, made it a little weird. It was like, you
I was
really
almost
care this
wondering
much?
if he was like the governor of the whole sector, and
That's what I was
why.
wondering.
Because
Yeah,
that's,
like if
yeah,
you wielded that much authority.
yeah, that is really the only thing I could think of.
Right. I'm with you there. Like you're the CEO, but you're also the president of the board.
Right. I mean,
Like,
it just kind of cracked up. But she's like, "You're 443rd in line." He was like, "Oh." It's like, that's very
all I
important
can
if like
think about,
34 of his kids all die. It's like, what?
right. All I could think about was oh shoot, what's her name from Dragon Age Inquisition? When she reveals she's like, I'm technically in line, like 34th in line for the Navaran throne. And she's like, people have charts on it, and oh, do they have charts? When she like demands to see the lineage chart, when Dolos does.
Yeah.
Um, I liked Simlex. I did think there was a charming naivete to him, right? Which they mention a few times in the book too, where he's just like, well, can't we just go out there? Like into the actual war zone where it's dangerous? Right? Like, oh, you're so adorable, bless your heart. And the fact that he doesn't pick up on a few of the things that are clearly that are not good
Right.
sooner. I guess because he's not looking for it, right? Because
Exactly.
heresy is evil.
Right. I mean, like he didn't even pick up really what was rotting in Denmark until till Kekazar picked up that thing about the Ealdari. And he's like, oh, wait, what? So that kind of unearthed like a whole other can of worms in many, many ways. But he's, well, he knows these are brave men and women, who are fighting, but they're fighting against the orcs, right? So it's not really that dangerous. So why can't you just take me out there?
Right. And why aren't we done with this fight?
Yeah, because aren't these just big dumb brutes with spears?
Right. Like, just charge. And like, there's that conversation, like when he kind of reacts poorly when Dolos is just like, well, I don't understand why you're just going to go charge them. And but then like he also kind of echoes that thought of like, why haven't we won yet? Like I'm really confused about this. They're just big dumb brutes. They don't think.
It is interesting because it kind of shows, I think, the hierarchy of things, right? So it's like
Mhm.
she says it, he's just like, like I'm a truth teller. I'm not really a propagandist, so I'm like I'm against this. You know, she doesn't know what she's talking about. So why don't you guys go? And then you know the military's like, okay, this guy has no clue, and so it kind of like trickles down from there. And like you were saying
Trickle
earlier,
down propaganda.
yeah, right. Well, just the whole like the willful ignorance, and
Yes.
you know, and it's also the thing is because we have to think this way, not only because we could be shot for thinking otherwise, but also it makes us feel safe, right? It makes
Right.
us feel safe that you know that the Xenos are dumber than us. They could never, you know, beat us in anything. You know, I was kind of laughing when they were like, yeah, we just can never get rid of the orcs. It's like we hear that they spring from the ground. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, oh, well. You know, if you had an inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos, they could tell you that is exactly true. But which just kind of brings up the whole thing of like the lack of education.
Hmm. Well, I did like when he's kind of musing on that with Shard, and he's like, "Are there females?" And she's like, "For all we know, those could be the females."
Right? Like, I
Like,
laughed at that.
I did too, because I'm like, on one hand, no, obviously there's no females for the orcs. They're fungus. But then again, player knowledge, not character knowledge. Um, as you mentioned, like an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor would be able to be like, actually, like,
Which like begs the question, like again, kind of goes back to the age old question: is the Inquisition helping or hindering? Because wouldn't you want to give your soldiers like all the information so they would know how to attack an enemy?
think so, but then the whole that I guess defeats the whole thing of propaganda, right? Like if you know that, oh, by the way, the orcs, um, not as smart as we are, but smarter than you would think. Oh, and by the way, they can grow to have the strength of an Astartes. They can kill an Adeptus Astartes. So go get him, Tiger. Like, does that make that harder then? That's not a very inspirational speech. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that. Um,
Or you could frame it in that this is why we have to go get them out as soon as possible.
right.
So, like, to prevent them
Well,
from
like
becoming like this. I mean, if you're a propagandist, can't you find ways of framing stuff? You know,
probably.
and that also kind of your job. But once you're in the military, I guess you're in. You're having to face a certain type of enemy. Don't you need to know everything about that enemy, whether it's human or not? That's what I would think. And
You would think. You would think. I did like when he was asking her, why do you burn them? Well, that's an old Imperial Guard superstition. No, that's actually just smart.
right, because they will just grow out of the swamp.
Yeah. They will cannibalize each other, not literally, for well, maybe literally, for parts. Like the, it's yeah, I think there is like there's a fine line between maybe you guys should understand a little more. Like I understood why Simlex didn't have a lot of information, but some of the things Von Shard was saying, I was like, really? Like Pliant probably had the most knowledge, and it was just because he had seen the orcs before. And even then, some of his knowledge, it was kind of like, yes, but not exactly.
Well, and you could
Um,
also tell he was very hesitant in sharing what he knew. Like he was afraid he was going to get in trouble.
very much so. What did you think of the orcs overall? Were they compelling? Were they fun? Did it make sense to see an air battle with orcs?
Well, I was very disappointed there was no rocks. I have to say, that was disappointing. But I almost kind of felt like we didn't get enough with the green storm.
Right.
Like I know I'm never going to fully understand what that was because it's it's orc psychic magic. You know, it doesn't have
It's
any
weird
rules.
boys, so it's weird.
I mean, it doesn't have any rules, right? But it just would have been nice to like just get like a little bit more information and just guys just more to see it in action. And But I think that is mostly because for whatever reason, I don't even know why. Well, they said they had orders, but they wouldn't go in there and charge it. If they had gone in there and charged it, like the entire battalion, she went in by herself, okay? With, like, I felt like it was reading a video game in many, many ways. Like everybody around you's dead, but it's just you, right? You're the one person who can go in and take care of it. And yes, she had like the holograms and stuff. But even if they didn't have the holograms and they had the entire battalion up there flying, they could have at least figured something out, and at least like a few of them could have made it back to report what it is. Then they could have actually made like a more strategic attack. They made their own proper tactics.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, they wouldn't do it. And that whole thing, really this whole thing befuddled me with the inaction everywhere. The governor's inaction. Well, then it made sense when you find out about the Eldari. So her inaction, and yet you understand her inaction because this whole thing is just it's just an inconvenience for the banquets and for how pretty things are. So you can understand, because that's just kind of how they are, right? Just like, oh, this is just, I just can't even right now with this. But the inaction of the military just floored me. Like,
also found that confusing. They tried to explain it away a few times where they're like, look, she wants us to protect her banquets. She wants us to protect her house. Like, she's not our direct superior, but we have to answer to this lady.
And at the same time, she was like, why don't you just go and take care of it? It was very strange.
Yeah, it was very strange. And on one hand, and we talked about this a little bit with Steel Tread, where, yeah, we're not going to get to know about what the Green Storm is about because it's not that type of a book, right? These are not Inquisitors. This is not an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor who's out there to figure out what's going on here, right? These are just rank and file soldiers who are like, this is really weird. I don't know what's going on. And I just want to be done and go home. And that's fair. Right, so we didn't get those answers. But there were some things that I was like, there's actually a lot of stuff, especially around the end of this book, that I really did want answers on. I like, again, and we'll talk a lot more about the Eldari here in a minute. But I'm with you. I didn't understand, like, why do you not just, like, why don't you charge in? Like, she's telling you to go don't charge in, literally. Like, just because she's presenting you with a bad option doesn't mean that you shouldn't go and do like a better option to fight these people. I understand you've lost everything, but there was always, and especially with Prosperous, like he in particular, well, my hands are tied. My hands are tied. Are your hands tied, or are you just choosing inaction because you don't want to be responsible for what comes next? I don't know the answer to that question.
No. Really, I think the only thing that would have like saved the planet, to be totally honest, at that point would have been Adeptus Astartes. But she wouldn't have asked for them to come because then they would have seen other problems like that. Because they actually are educated about their enemies.
Yeah, and God help you if the Space Wolves showed up. They would have been having none of it.
We're just burning this whole thing to the ground.
Pretty much. Yeah. We're just gonna...
Yeah, so if you're gonna go that route, just bring the salamanders, because they're gonna like, sniff Eldari and be like, oh, no. Fire. So
it's gonna be that kind of a night.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Yeah. So this kind of bleeds in because you have the orcs on one hand, right? The orcs are the actual credible threat, like seemingly, right? They're
the visible threat.
The visible threat, right? They are violent. They are terrifying. The whole Green Storm thing. I'm with you. Like, I liked it. It was clearly a weird boy. We know enough about the orcs so that we can be dangerous. It was clearly a weird boy of some type.
Or a bunch of them.
Or a bunch of them. I still can't get over the raining bullets. You guys, that was probably the most inspired thing we read all year. It's like the storm with bullet rain. Like that is the most orky thing I've ever seen or heard of.
I love that, but like the lightning that if it touched you, it teleported. So like that's just kind of funny.
Amazing.
It's like
That's absolutely hilarious.
like
And when they're
the
trying to
back
figure
end of our
out,
plane just disappeared.
yeah. And I do like when she's like, I'm sorry, what? Like, oh, yeah. By the way, yeah. I love that. That was all great. I did like the whole thing that they're like, how are they getting here? Like, well, they can teleport, y'all. But then there was the Eldari. What did you think of the Eldari? Did they serve the narrative? What was their game here? What
So the only thing I could think of
what was going on with
their
space elves?
game, well, because I totally missed the clue that they were even at the party.
Mhm.
So, like I think it was mentioned like once that that just like an offhand comment enough just to make you just kind of like, okay, whatever, just kind of like me, I just totally forgot about it. Like I remembered Pliant talking about his encounters with the fish commies, but I didn't remember him talking about the Eldari ever. So like that was just, so if they had said Tau, I'd been like, oh, okay, he did mention the Tau, but no, I just totally missed over the whole Eldari thing. Anything, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if it was actually the Drukari who were just like, let's have some fun. Let's give them a plant and then just watch.
What I was leaning towards as well. I am horrible
Especially with her suddenly painting those sigils, and she was kind of slowly going insane and painting those other things that were obviously like chaotic in nature.
Right.
You know?
Very much so. And just some of the stuff they described. So I am horrible with mysteries and stuff like that. So as soon as he said, he was just like, I can't believe. And I went back and I looked. It's actually across pages 99 and 100. Because he's like, I cannot believe that they came into this banquet. And Smithy's like, no, pay no attention to him. And he's like, but he just said that the Eldari at a banquet? No.
Oh, that. Yes. I do remember that. Yeah.
Yes. So then the whole book, I was waiting for the Eldari stuff. Like, just waiting for it. Okay, when are they going to show up? When are they going to show up? And I liked when they did, but again, it kind of felt to me, I was like, and?
Huh.
Like, they're here, they acknowledge that they're here, but to what end? Like, I wasn't sure what purpose they served to the narrative itself.
Yeah, honestly, because I'm rereading this right now, like real fast, and I do remember this because as soon as you said that guy at the party, yes, okay, I do remember that, but I was too busy. I was focused on the Tau because I still had that in my mind from Pliant talking about the Tau.
Fair.
So that's why I actually have my variable line that the Tau was just a red herring. So if you guys ever saw the movie Clue, you should. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that.
I can hear that in Leslie Ann Warren's voice.
Like, I'm funny. I'm funny, damn it. So anyway,
you are funny and we love you.
Yes, exactly. So, but yeah, so I totally had glossed over that. So I really don't know what the Eldari's end game was because then Dolos just kind of disappeared, right? And
then they catch her at the end. They're like, oh, by the way, we caught her. Like, cool. Like, I guess in some ways, it made this book the ultimate piece of Warhammer 40k Imperial propaganda, right? Like, it kind of feels like the Administratum wagging its finger at you, like, if you make deals with the Eldari, you're going to fall asleep at the wheel and your planet's going to get taken over by orcs. Like, it feels like that type of, like, cautionary tale, right? Like, like whenever your parents would give you the talk about like, don't ever try weed because then the next thing you're going to be wanting to do heroin. It's a gateway drug.
That's right. It goes all the way from weed to heroin. There's nothing in between.
Exactly. It's like that escalating series of events. If you talk to an Eldari, you accept gifts from an Eldari, this is what's going to happen. You're going to lose your whole planet.
Like, think of there's a Panic at the Disco song where the line is like champagne, cocaine, gasoline, and all things in between.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's like it's one of those things where I was like, it's actually kind of brilliant because it does make it the ultimate propagandist piece. But I also got to the end and was just like, and like, okay, they clearly, and again, it's not for our main characters to know, right? That's one of the downsides of following somebody like a propagandist or an ace pilot is that it's not for them to
Mm-hmm.
wonder why there's this to do and die. Um, like we don't need
Right.
to know what the Eldari are doing, but I also kind of was like, what was the end game here? Like they clearly were rotting the planet and they were clearly messing with it. Maybe you're right. Maybe it was the Chukari and they were just like, eh,
Funsies.
I'm bored.
Well, that's how I see the Drukari, though.
Pretty much bored rich people.
Yes.
Like, I'm bored. Do you want to mess with the peasants?
Want to mess with
It
other
reminded
bored
me of
rich people?
it's like a it's like trading places.
Yeah.
Like we
Yes.
can ruin this man's life for $1. I
Right.
would love to imagine the Eldari in the background being like, "Oh, I bet them $1 that we couldn't destroy the whole planet." Like
Yes. Yeah.
exactly. That is God, that's like all of the bored rich people of Warhammer 40k in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
mean,
god.
look at even the navigators, right?
I was just about to say, like, look at the navigators in there. Did you know that that one killed her husband?
No. It wasn't mentioned 15 times or anything like that. So it was a total surprise when it got brought up near the end.
I'm never gonna be over that. Anyways.
Oh, no. That's going to be one of our book club inside jokes to the end of time.
To the end of time.
We're going to be 90, and I'll still text you. You remember? Did you know?
That one lady killed her husband.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much. I have a friend who every now and then will text me about this fox stole that we found in a thrift market in the French Quarter. Every now and then she'll just text me and be like, remember that one time? And I'm like, I do now. Yes, I will never forget that. But I guess that is them in a nutshell, and maybe that's all this was. Maybe they were just like, oh, let's just sow chaos. Like,
Yeah.
cause
I mean, because honestly, I can't see the regular Eldari doing something like this because they don't do anything without a purpose.
I mean, unless some farseer was like, look, this planet needs to go down.
Oh, okay, I guess that's
Like,
true.
that could possibly be what it was.
But I don't see in that manner, though. They would have done. I think they would have. I don't know.
I think you're right.
I think it was the Drukari. I mean, just for the fact that she's painting the chaos, I just don't see the other Eldari doing that over the Drukari. So
I kind of wondered when she was like, oh, I'm an artist too. I like to paint. But then he was like, oh, can I see your stuff? And she was like, oh, no, 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 no. Okay.
Honestly,
chaos,
I just figured it was that she likes to paint, but it's like her escape, but it doesn't mean she wants to show what she's doing.
She was a little too arrogant for that modesty. Like I was taken aback when she was like, "Oh, it's not that good." Really? Like, are you serious? I guess in hindsight, I should have seen that the overly elaborate costumes were probably Eldari inspired.
You know, honestly, with some of the over elaborate costumes that we've seen with the navigators, I didn't think anything of it. Although, especially with everybody being masked, all I could think about was Dragon Age and the Orlesians. That's really how I imagined all of them. Was that the big Winter's Ball that you would go to in a Dragon Age Inquisition?
That reminds me. I have been looking and I can't figure out what it was. Somebody please help me. I am trying to think of every time they described her like insect piece headdress, I kept picturing something. It's from a really bad 80s fantasy movie, and no, I know that does not narrow things down. But I can't think of the movie that it was from now, and no, it's not Flash Gordon and that ridiculous thing that she's wearing in there, although that is a pretty good guess. Now that I say that out loud. I cannot think about what it reminds me of, but it does. Like the way they were describing it, I was like, oh, this is inspired by this thing. And just ridiculous. Like, how do these people, like, they must have like neck supports, like a.
Well, he even made a comment about one of the headdresses. Like, was he saying it was a neck straining headdress or something like that? It was I'm like, well, yeah, because I mean, I even thought that was like even playing like Dragon Age with some of those masks with the huge headdresses. I'm just like, that hurts my neck like so
Oh,
badly.
all I can think of is they must have like the what is that tribe of women? I think they're from Laos, but it might be from northern Thailand, where they stretch their neck with the metal
Oh, the
bands. Like
metal
they must have
bands.
like yeah, they must have those on them, like to keep them up with some of these things. Oh, it was just a very interesting touch. I think I kind of I kind of liked the Eldari plot, but I kind of wanted to see more from it too. Again, I know we weren't supposed to, but I was "Ah," like that's
Well,
one of the frustrations of having characters that aren't allowed to have that kind of knowledge.
right. But at the same time, though, I think it would have made things worse if we did. Like, for
Probably would have
example,
opened more questions.
I was actually kind of frustrated that Shard lived.
I felt the same. I actually thought of
Yeah,
what
that
was the Dawn
other.
of Fire book? Yeah,
Yeah, yes.
the Dawn of Fire book where we
Yep.
were like, why is she still alive? Like, not to sound callous, but why though? I guess because the Von Shards don't die. I mean, they need to have their fingers in all of the branches of the Militarum. Although, I mean, it's heavily implied that if she died, they just find another one.
Well, I mean, they even talked about how that, they're like, we don't care what happens to her. Like, she's an
Yeah,
embarrassment
pretty
to her
much.
family. Okay. Um, so it was probably a good thing that she was never assigned a regiment where her brother was commissar.
Right. Exactly. Um, but yeah, I was a little disappointed that she died. She survived as well. I was like, oh, that would have, because he kind of sets you up
Well, like
to think
in
she's dead.
in the preface, it even
Yeah.
says like the last time he saw her was silent, hanging in the void. Okay. So that's really how I thought things were going to end. And so it's like, oh yeah, she saw the movie too, and yeah, she got promoted. She's doing this and that. I'm like, why was she promoted? Like that goes against like everything. Okay, so she was
Right.
the hero this one time after she already defied all these orders. Like,
Because she's useful,
I
which is
guess
also the 40k way, right?
right,
No,
but
she's very useful.
okay. So all right, you got me there 100%. But I was still disappointed that she lived. It just seemed like one of those things that it just seemed unnecessary.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It did feel I think it would have had a little more oomph to it had she died. And then
Thank
that's
you.
like
Yeah.
that could have and then that's the scientific and technical word. Oomph comes from old Latin. Um they I think it would have added a little bit to it, especially given the fact that they did basically sequester and censor his original work. Not only does she die, the real story about what happened to her doesn't get out either. That would have been very Warhammer 40k. Having said that, I mean, Pliant kind of, or that he hears that she still exists and that Kikazar is still in her plane, but heck, for all we know, like Pixar, it didn't happen, right?
Right.
It is the 40k universe. It yeah, I think now that we're talking about it, like when I first finished the book, I was like, I don't know about that one. It was okay. But the more that we're talking about it now, I think I did enjoy it more than I originally thought I did, despite some of my commentary on this podcast tonight. I feel like I've been like super negative about it, which I did. I mean, I did. It was enjoyable. There were a lot of things in it that I liked. Denny Flowers is a good author. I really liked his dialogue. His
Oh my
dialogue was
gosh.
on a nice clip.
Oh, the dialogue and the description both. That was just. I look forward to more books by
Yes.
by Denny Flowers, and
Yes,
one
I
what.
agree with that.
So when I was kind of posting stuff like on our Twitter, I did happen to see a quick like little review, and it was talking about how this was like a breath of fresh air. And I was like, well, that's an interesting way of thinking about it. And the more I thought about it, that was when it kind of hit me. I was like, well, it is a breath of fresh air, and that there's no redeeming characters. There's no
That's
hero.
true.
There's no
That's
hero.
true.
There's there is nothing but the truth. There is no redeeming thing, and we saved everything. Nothing was saved.
No,
Literally nothing was saved. It
nothing was saved.
This was like the most Warhammer 40k book we might have read in a long time, if you really think about it in those terms.
You are probably correct, and that is that these were all very real people,
Mm-hmm.
very flawed. Um, And it's a breath of fresh air because they're pilots, you see. They're in the air.
Hmm.
Um,
I
but
don't
it
think the
also,
swamp air is that fresh, but that's just me. I mean, I haven't really lived in a swamp, but that's just what I would assume.
having had to spend every summer in a swamp growing up, and don't kid yourself, Houston's swamp adjacent. Anything that's humid is a swamp to me now because I've spent so much time in Colorado.
I lived on the north side, so I wasn't really. Yes, we were in the floodplains because the whole area is the floodplains, but we weren't really in the. They're not what I would consider the swamp. What I consider swamp, I think of Louisiana and Florida with their airboats. That's what I think of with swamp.
That's the swamp I went to most summers.
Like I know
And
there's some swamp areas in
has a
Texas
smell.
because my brother-in-law, one of his best friends, they own a house on this island that's in the middle of some Texas swamp because that's where they go to shoot duck and stuff. So like when Harvey happened, he happened to have his airboat, and that's what he used to go rescue people. It was like, okay, that's kind of a fun excuse to go down like middle of like a busy highway that's now flooded with water about 6 feet. I'm in an airboat.
She sounds so awesome, and I'm now insanely jealous.
I know. Like I
Um,
would see these pictures of like a street that I would drive down to go to high school that was 5, 6 feet underwater, and they're speeding down in a speedboat. I'm like, first of all, that's so wrong, but second time, it's so cool, and I kind of wish I was on that boat with you,
metal, take me with you.
right?
And having been on airboats before, I'm not a fan of them, and even I kind of want to do that. Um, anytime we read books about swamps, I'm like, I can smell this book. um, I am of the Colorado people and belong in the Colorado. I do not handle humidity well.
I am very
get
curious.
places, I'm like, this is a swamp.
So, as someone who has visited swamps, I'm very curious what kind of wine you could grow from swamps. Like, it really makes me wonder about what fruit
When they
you're
were
getting.
when he was describing the undertaste of mildew, I was like, this is everything that I expected from a swamp. Like, it, he's talking about like how, oh, this is very fine vintage. I'm like, of toilet wine? Like, that's the only thing that's coming out of a swamp, y'all. Like, the only stuff that grows down there is grody. Like, is it crawfish wine?
Oh, God. That's so nasty.
I would like to apologize to all of our listeners / viewers.
Yeah, I'm sorry you got to see me make that face, but oh my God. Mm.
I love crawfish, and that's disgusting.
Yeah, no, but I don't. It's a thing about drinking meat. I have issues with. You're not
Ew.
supposed to do that.
What
Oh.
fruit does grow in a swamp? Because you can't grow like grapes. Like the only thing I can think of right now that's like you would get out of a swamp would be like nutria.
That's not
Not
really a
that bad,
fruit.
actually. No, nutria is a rat,
Swamp rat, yeah.
and they're actually not that bad. Apples, I guess. I don't know.
Well,
Like
because they never said it was grapes. They just said it was a fruit. But you can make wine
figs
out
do
of
really
any fruit,
well.
huh?
Like figs do great in Louisiana. Cranberries do well in swamps. That's all they do is just float them along, right?
Right. Ugh,
I'm
I
not
would
getting
not
like
want
any
to eat
really.
cranberries like floating along a
I
swamp.
love cranberries.
I know I like cranberries, but I like them when they're harvested in the farms with like the cleanish water, not swamp water.
You got me there.
I mean,
Persimmons. Okay, that's enough Google for that.
okay,
The good news
fig
is,
wine might be interesting.
huh?
Fig wine might be interesting.
I would drink that. Although
Yeah.
part of the joy of figs is the texture of them. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Wasps.
I was about to say because you're
Um,
eating the wasp.
Kids. But so this book was characters who knew nothing. Our next book is going to be arguably characters who know too much.
Too much. Yes.
With Awakenings by George Mann. I am super excited. It has been forever since I read the comic of Aster Sabathiel.
Which I read it
Really?
too, but I didn't know anything and I was very confused.
That's very natural.
I probably should go
This
back
book-
and reread it now that I know about the Dark Angels.
This book, like the special edition, is lovely.
Even though she looks
I
like
love-
Mary Queen of Scots, aka Bloody Mary on the front.
So if you recall, not this year, but last year, the Warhammer 40k calendar had her on the December month. And
This one.
one of our friends who doesn't read Warhammer 40k, she was like, why do you have scary Queen Elizabeth I on your wall? So now I just call her Scary Queen Elizabeth or Bloody Mary, because she's going to be real spitting mad when she comes back from the dead.
Yeah, so I think it's when you said angry Queen Elizabeth, and I was like, yeah, but all the red, and I see the royalty with this, collar, definitely, but with
The hair.
but with the anger, actually, just because I've seen paintings of Mary Queen of Scots. I mean, that's kind of not too far what she looked like.
Not too far off.
I mean,
Yeah.
sword, angry, and she was called Bloody Mary for a reason because she killed a whole lot of Protestants. She
Even
was
though, statistically speaking, compared to other royals, she didn't really kill that many. It was
well,
just that she
but
happened
they
to
were
this
her
one.
own people, so that was
Yeah, and it was predominantly, I mean, it was basically genocide, so that was the other reason that she got that. But
right.
she really was not
So I mean,
that bloody of a queen.
no, I mean it's cool to kill. She killed the French. I wouldn't have called her anything, but she
That's a
killed her own.
victimless crime.
Right, exactly.
It's a
But
joke.
she killed her own people. So
Exactly. We tend to frown on that.
right.
Um, unless you're Stalin. Um,
Haha.
um, Stalin jokes never old.
Speaking
Anyways,
of space fish commies.
yeah. So that is we are reading Awakening. Super excited. It is available via hardback, ebook, and audiobook as well. So
Is it available
keeping up
on
with our
hardback?
trend here.
I only
It was, I think. I think now it's just ebook and audiobook.
okay.
So if you missed out on the special edition, you will still be able to follow along at home with us, which is really awesome. I feel like, because I know we have a lot of people who read ebook and a lot of people who do audiobook, and like the last few books that we've read have all had them. It's been really awesome.
It has been. Yeah, I mean we've been looking forward to reading this like forever.
Yes.
So
So this one's going to be no pressure, George Man.
yeah, none whatsoever. I think I've only read one book by George Mann. Actually, it was the Shrike.
I was going to say probably.
The Shrike. Because I did read that, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. So
Yeah, I'm excited.
We'll
That
see.
should be good.
yeah.
Do you want to take us out, Carrie?
Yes, I think I will before I drink more tea and then be like, I really have to go to the bathroom. That'd be embarrassing for everybody here. All right, so you've listened to the Warhammer 40k Book Club episode regarding Outgunned by Denny Flowers. So be sure to join us next time for Awakenings by George Mann. We are an unofficial book club and not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and podcast on our website, WH40kbookclub.com. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those things to the vidcast on YouTube or the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Our site has articles about our adventures in reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books. So please stay a while and read from a crack. And I'm still off Arius. Just let you know. As I drink my tea with my pinky out.
Iron within, iron without. Still love my bitter man children.
I feel like when you say that, because it's you saying it, not a Iron Warrior, you need to make a poem out of that. Iron within, iron without.
I like to see them pout, since they often do.
Never wrong, but without a doubt.
That works.
Or
See,
always
look at that.
wrong,
I was
but without a
terrible
doubt.
I was terrible at poetry. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.